Good morning, how are you? I'm Angel, welcome to my channel. In November last year, I got this book, Huaco Retrato or Portrait Vessel, and I have read it at last. For those who don't know what a Huaco Retrato is, a huaco is a vessel, a piece of pre-Hispanic ceramics. Some of them are sculptural and some are authentic 3D portraits, like the ones you can see next to me and on which I reflect myself. They are heavily associated with the Moche civilization from the northern coast of Peru. The author is the Peruvian writer, journalist, and feminist activist Gabriela Wiener, who also writes opinion columns in different international newspapers, or so it says. Frankly, I didn't know anything about her until I bought the book. Published by Penguin Random House Editorial Group in October 2021. In 170 pages and 2 sections, this book is supposedly a novel, but the own author questions its genre, and yes, there is a history, stories, denunciation, family memoir, activism, chronicle, and even a poem. It's hard to label it. I understand it as a means of catharsis at different levels, from personal to national, from family to race. I don't perceive fiction in her words. Let's start. The author's great-great-grandfather, Charles Wiener, was a Jewish from Austria who became a French citizen and Catholic. He was in Peru in the 19th century and plundered 4,000 pre-Hispanic artifacts, taking them to France to be exhibited at the 1878 Paris World's Fair. On the first 3 pages, we can already read denunciations. She calls plunderers, huaqueros with no euphemisms, those who plunder archaeological sites, who extract and traffic, page 12. And her ancestor was a plunderer, let's face it. Throughout the book, we perceive that mark or scar that Charles Wiener has left on his Peruvian descendants. Pride? Definitely. But if we research, could there be shame or even doubt of their very lineage? She learns that her great-great-grandfather was in Peru 2 years only, met Maria Rodriguez, and their son was born in 1877, when Wiener had already left Peru, page 37. That is, he did not care about his son. But it seems like a duty to be proud of him. About his book, Peru and Bolivia, Wiener is particularly cruel with the indigenous population of our country. Must his descendants be proud of him? Here is Gabriela to problematize that among her family. We also learned that Wiener took a native boy to France, and Gabriela did everything she could to know more about that poor child. Also, her ancestor embodies colonialism and imperialism of countries like France, which regarded their colonies and former colonies as mere territories of which to steal natural and cultural resources, even native people for their fairs and human zoos, everything framed by a prevailing scientific racism, as page 113 says, establishing a hierarchy among peoples and considering the white race as the superior one. Something Gabriela totally disagrees with and attempts to fight against the reminiscences of such colonialism that might remain nowadays. At the same time, the book deals with Gabriela's relationship with her father, who had a mistress and a daughter with her. He bequeaths the book Peru and Bolivia to Gabriela, a large book written by Charles Wiener in the 19th century. Apparently, those are separate stories, but there are links between them throughout the book. She reflects on the relationship between her father and mother, and between him and his mistress, on her mother's pity or shame for permitting her husband's double life. And the author repeats that pattern, but this time this is something accepted. A throuple, not couple, which has its ups and downs. Because of this writer, I had to search for the word polyamory. She bluntly says things like, my husband and my wife, page 27. Jaime, Peruvian, and Rossi, Spanish. Her never-ending traumas go on here. Her trouble crisis is helped by female partners devoted to activism and political fight in their own areas, page 105. Again, we see those links between her stories. That affinity group is called Decolonizing My Desire, only for migrant and racialized people, page 117. And well, I won't mention her group therapist, just that she had to write a poem, and this is called Panchilandia, which means Latin America in a pejorative way used in Spain. There is a surprising lot of ethnic slurs against Latin American people in Spain, but it's better stop here because someone might accuse me of hating Spain or that I promote the so-called Spanish Black legend, and I love Spain. Throughout the book, I've wanted to understand this book as catharsis. There are many racial, individual, and family traumas. I have found such phrases I'd like to quote as, "I'm the most indigenous of the Wieners," page 37. "I thought the only white thing in me was my surname. My brown, mixed and Spik identity tries to hide the Wiener I am inside," page 45. All this time living in Spain, I regularly meet people who tell me my face looks Peruvian, page 60. I have wished in women what I wanted for myself, thinness and whiteness, page 120. There's an open wound which comes from past generations, like her grandmother who was white indigenous mixed but racist, or Rosie's grandma, who asks another person about Gabriela, in her own presence, about her work as a maid. Not only doesn't she speak to her directly, but by looking at her she assumes Gabriela is a maid, pages 128 to 129. Just an example of her current and usual experience with racism, because although I try to understand but I can't, she lives in Spain and has lived there for years. Because there's a lid for every pot. On the one hand, we have a civilizing, revisionist and negationist discourse. On the other, there's a revanchist, colonizing discourse. I don't need to say which one she supports. Both are wrong, in my view. Something I like is her sarcasm, her funny, witty and caustic style. Phrases like, "The idea of not reading it gnaws at me. I'm a writer after all, and so far he's the only Wiener who's written a bestseller," page 25. Supposedly, on the other hand, being the wife's daughter is okay, especially if the husband never leaves the wife, page 39. Or, "The cloud covers which close the sky of this city, the most unfair sky I've ever seen," page 51. Or, "There's something in this wicked mix of Huaquero, plunderer, and Huaco, ceramics, which runs through my veins," page 61. Yes, it's often a pleasure to read her, although I have my reservations about the lots of trendy lefty terms I have read here. Words like racialized, dissident, feminist groups, oppressed, decolonized, sex affectivity, colonial wound, militancy, even fex, F-E-X-S, ugly ones in Spanish, but replacing the vowels O and A to indicate masculine or feminine gender, using the letter X instead. You know what I mean. My reservations are also about things I consider extra or unnecessary, like practicing fellatio to a man on the street, her masturbation, or that she has aborted. But I guess catharsis involves all of that. Well, if I bought the book, it was because I wanted to know about her ancestor and those questions of identity, race, and the plunder of our cultural heritage. Not her polyamory, her two partners, and her sexuality in general. But anyway, in her defense, I'd have to say that a person comes to this world with a whole combo, a whole package. So if you buy it, watch out. Out of curiosity, I have read something about Miss Wiener on the net, and I do not share most of her ideology, but since I have never visited Spain, I don't know firsthand the discourse which is demonizing pre-Columbian civilizations. But I know more about the other discourse here in our continent of people with some ideology who stoke past fires, demanding Spain to ask for forgiveness, or who intend to demolish monuments to Columbus. Both sides are Manichaean, biased and outdated. I guess in both cases only minor groups support them, but they are noisy enough and get the spotlights. Coming back to the book, when I speak about complexes and traumas or demons, as she says, I am not laughing since I guess everybody has them, especially in this country of every blood. It's hard not to look at ourselves at the mirror and question ourselves. Maybe everybody has experienced this. So looking into our family's history is a good practice to understand life and oneself. That could be the key to have a better relationship with the others at every level, I suppose. It has been a pleasure. I recommend reading this book. Bye bye.